The morning sun beat down on the parking lot of Joe's Diner where a group of leather-clad bikers had stopped for breakfast during their annual charity ride through rural Iowa. These weren't the kind of men most people expected to see at a small-town diner. With their heavy boots and tattooed arms and vests covered in patches from rides across the country, they looked like they belonged in a different world entirely. But Tom Henderson knew better. At 58 years old and with more miles on his Harley than most people put on 3 cars in a lifetime, he had learned that the Brotherhood of the road was built on something deeper than appearances. These men and women riding beside him had become his family over the years, and together they raised money for children's hospitals and helped veterans and showed up wherever they were needed. Tom was just finishing his coffee when he heard it. A sound that cut through the rumble of motorcycle engines and the chatter of his friends. A child's voice, high and desperate and filled with terror. "Please help. They're beating my mama." Everyone in the parking lot turned to see a little girl running toward them. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with wild brown curls bouncing around her tear-streaked face. Her red dress was dusty and one of her shoelaces had come untied and dragged behind her as she ran. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe, and Tom felt his heart clench at the sight of her. He dropped to one knee as she reached him and held out his hands in a gentle gesture of calm. "Whoa there, sweetheart. Take a breath now. You're safe. Tell me what's happening." The little girl grabbed onto his vest with both hands, looking up at him with eyes so filled with fear and hope that Tom felt something shift inside his chest. "My mama," she gasped between sobs. "The bad men came and they're hurting her. Please, you have to help her." Tom looked over his shoulder at the others. His riding partners were already moving, putting down their food and heading for their bikes. Nobody needed to say a word. This is what they did. This is who they were. "What's your name, honey?" Tom asked the girl, keeping his voice soft and steady. "Emma," she whispered. "Emma Rose Cooper, and my mama's name is Natasha, and please, you have to hurry. We're going to help your mama, Emma Rose. I promise you that. Can you show us where she is?" Emma nodded frantically and pointed down the street. "Our house. The yellow one with the broken fence. Please hurry." Tom scooped Emma up in his arms and carried her to where his friend Sarah was waiting by her bike. Sarah was a grandmother herself, with kind eyes and silver streaks in her dark hair. "Sarah, you stay here with Emma. The rest of you with me." But Emma wouldn't let go of Tom's vest. "No, I have to come. I have to make sure Mama's okay." Tom looked into those pleading eyes and made a decision. "All right then. You hold on tight to me and don't let go no matter what. Understand?" Emma nodded, and Tom settled her carefully on the seat in front of him, making sure she was secure. Then he kicked his bike to life and led the group down the quiet street, following Emma's directions. It didn't take long to find the house. The yellow paint was peeling and the fence sagged in places, and there in the driveway were 2 men standing over a woman who was on the ground trying to shield herself from their kicks. Tom felt a cold anger settle over him, but he kept his voice calm as he brought his bike to a stop. Behind him 17 more motorcycles pulled up, forming a wall of chrome and leather in solidarity. The sound alone was enough to make the 2 men freeze and look up. "I think that's about enough of that," Tom said quietly as he carefully helped Emma down. From the bike, the larger of the 2 men, a guy with a beer belly and mean eyes, stepped forward. "This ain't your business, old man. This is between me and my ex-wife." "Well, I'm making it my business," Tom replied. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Behind him his friends had dismounted and were standing in a line, and the message was clear. The woman on the ground looked up and her face was a mess of tears and forming bruises. But when she saw Emma running toward her, she found the strength to push herself up. "Baby, no. Stay back. Mama." Emma crashed into her mother's arms, and Natasha Cooper wrapped herself around her daughter and began to sob. Tom watched as the second man, the one who had been doing most of the kicking, shifted nervously. These weren't hardened criminals. They were cowards who thought they could push around a woman half their size and get away with it. "Here's what's going to happen," Tom said, and his voice had the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding respect on the open road. "You 2 are going to leave right now, and you're not going to come back. Ever. And if I hear that you've been anywhere near this woman or her daughter again, you'll have a lot more than just me to deal with. We have brothers and sisters in every town in this state. Are we clear?" The beer-bellied man started to puff up like he might argue, but his friend grabbed his arm. "Come on, Eddie. Let's go." "Yeah, Eddie," Tom said. "Let's use some common sense here. The two men backed away slowly, then practically ran to their truck. As they peeled out of the driveway, Tom turned his attention to Natasha and Emma. Sarah had already knelt beside them and was gently checking Natasha's injuries. "Nothing broken, I don't think, but you're going to have some nasty bruises, honey. We should get you to a doctor." Natasha shook her head. "I can't afford that. I'll be okay. I just need—" Her voice broke and she pulled Emma closer. "Thank you. Thank you so much. When Eddie showed up with his brother, I thought—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Tom looked at this young mother who couldn't have been more than 30, with her split lip and her brave face and her fierce love for her daughter, and he thought about his own daughter who lived 3 states away. He thought about all the times he wished someone had been there to help when help was needed. "Listen," he said, crouching down so he was at eye level with both of them. "How about we make sure you're really okay? Sarah here used to be a nurse and we're not going anywhere until we know you don't need medical attention. And then maybe we can talk about that fence of yours. Looks like it could use some fixing." Natasha stared at him like he had just spoken a foreign language. "I don't understand. Why would you do that? You don't even know us." Tom smiled and it softened his weathered face. "Well, now that's not quite true, is it? We know Emma Rose here is one of the bravest girls we've ever met. Took a lot of courage to run for help like that. And we know her mama raised her right, because that kind of brave doesn't come from nowhere. That's enough for us." Over the next few hours, the parking lot of Joe's Diner became a staging area for an impromptu rescue mission. While Sarah tended to Natasha's injuries and made sure she really was okay, several of the bikers headed to the hardware store. Others went back to Emma and Natasha's house and started working on that fence. Tom stayed with Emma, who had finally stopped crying but wouldn't let go of his hand. They sat on the curb outside the diner and Tom bought her an ice cream cone and listened as she told him about school and her friends and how worried she had been about her mama. "He used to be married to her," Emma explained in that matter-of-fact way children have. "But he was mean, so mama said he had to leave. But he keeps coming back and he gets really angry and I didn't know what to do, so I ran and ran until I saw you." "You did exactly the right thing, sweetheart," Tom told her. "That was very smart. Are you a good guy?" Emma asked, suddenly looking up at him with those serious brown eyes. Tom thought about that question. He thought about the choices he had made in his life, some good and some not so good. He thought about the man he had been and the man he had tried to become. "I'm trying to be," he said honestly. "Every day I'm trying." Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She leaned against his arm, getting chocolate ice cream on his vest, but Tom didn't mind. By late afternoon the fence was repaired and the locks on Natasha's doors had been changed, and Sarah had convinced her to at least file a police report. The local sheriff, who knew some of the bikers from previous charity events, had come by and taken statements and promised to keep an eye on the house. As the sun started to sink toward the horizon, Tom and his friends prepared to get back on the road. They still had 200 miles to go before they reached their destination and the light was getting long. Natasha stood in her driveway with Emma beside her and there were fresh tears on her face, but these were different tears. "I don't know how to thank you," she said. "Any of you. You could have just driven by. You could have ignored her. But you didn't." "We couldn't," Tom said simply. "That's not who we are." Emma suddenly broke away from her mother and ran to Tom, wrapping her arms around his waist. "Thank you for saving my mama," she whispered. "You're my hero." Tom felt his throat tighten and he knelt down one more time. "You're the hero, Emma Rose. You saved your mama by being brave enough to ask for help. Don't you ever forget that. And don't you ever be afraid to ask for help when you need it. There are good people in this world. Sometimes they just look a little different than you expect." As the group of bikers rode out of town, Tom glanced in his rearview mirror and saw Emma and Natasha waving from their driveway. Mother and daughter safe now in a house with a fixed fence and changed locks, and the knowledge that they weren't alone in the world. That night when the group stopped at a motel, Tom called his own daughter for the first time in months. They had drifted apart over the years, as families sometimes do, but hearing her voice reminded him why days like this mattered. Why showing up mattered. Why being there for people, even strangers, mattered. "I love you," he told her before hanging up. "And I'm proud of you." 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at the motorcycle club's meeting hall addressed simply to "The Angels on Motorcycles." Inside was a crayon drawing of a man on a bike holding hands with a little girl in a red dress. At the bottom in careful child's printing it read, "Thank you for being heroes. Love, Emma Rose." Tom pinned it to the wall where everyone could see it, and every time he looked at it he remembered why he rode. Not for the wind in his face or the freedom of the open road, though those things were good too. He rode because the road took him places where he could make a difference. Where he could show up when someone needed help. Where he could be the person he wanted to be. And that summer day in a small Iowa town when a little girl in a red dress ran crying into a parking lot and found help in the most unexpected place taught Tom something he carried with him for the rest of his life. Kindness doesn't have a look. Courage doesn't have a size. And family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you find along the way.